Well, then I would suggest we just seamlessly switch into the panel discussion. Let's start with the questions we had in the chat already. So we had two additional ones for team. The first was about, the first is from Shripriya, and it's about how industry agnostic, how well can the Respeak deal with industry-specific jargon or technology terms and so on. Mm-hmm. Will it pick up on it?
The thing is, that's an excellent question, because I also mentioned with the short outlook I gave in how can I use chatbots for sort of exploratory research, new product development, maybe domains that I don't know quite well. This goes into the same direction of like, how can I understand, there's a lot of industry domain specific jargon. How can the chatbot work with this? The question is, the answer as usual is it depends. For the chatbot that we built or used, and specifically with this lettering technique, it didn't matter too much to have certain jargons or technology terms, because it was not required for the follow-up questions we used. However, there might be interview contexts where it's very relevant to understand specific terms directly and probe for these specific terms. And in these contexts, we would need to know, I guess, these terms in advance and configure the bot, well, relatedly to these specific jargons. But it sort of depends on the use case. The benefit of lettering really is that I can always ask sort of the question, why is this important to you? If I do a simple lettering interview, it doesn't really matter if I actually understand the attribute that users mentioned. But as I mentioned before, it might be very relevant to actually have a good understanding of the semantics of a term and formulate the answer appropriately. But imagine thinking about what Tommi does and what Ivo does, that this question is actually relevant for both of us, because semantics can also be attached to specific industry-related terms. So maybe also Tommi can elaborate a little bit on this.
This is true. This is true, and there's actually two different things how we normally also discuss with or how we kind of tweak the model in the very beginning. Normally, there's two things, only things where we actually are changing the model together with the customer. One is to discuss practically the top hierarchies of the theming, because the data will provide the theming, and also the automation what we have in the beginning is for this, let's say, small themes, which might not arise from the data. Could be, for example, the product names and stuff like that. So it will really read that from the let's say product websites and so on. But then the semantics is interesting. There is a certain kind of wording and the let's say the meaning, negative, positive meanings, which might not be something that the model will be, the common model will be detecting correctly, and that's exactly something what you have to teach. But these are of course quite small, so it's kind of fast to teach those specific meanings in the semantic model. In our model, so the model for understanding the let's say topic related themes is something what is learning from the customer data alone, but then the sentiment analytics is something which is generally it's a common, because it's a more of a human like natural language kind of understanding based issue.
Yeah. Okay, so then we have a question that from Andreas Birk. It was originally for Tim, but I believe it makes sense to ask both of you. Do users need any AI-related competencies so that they can use your tool effectively? Do they need to understand AI so that they can, I don't know, frame the right questions or?
For Respeak specifically, they don't need any AI-based competencies at all. This is also, I didn't have really time to go into the ideas of sort of this interactive paradigm, or another way to frame it is interactive machine learning. The idea for us was always that technical experts should have the opportunity to work with these tools, because they don't really care about how well a model is trained or what model is used or something. They care about the results in the end. And this was always very important to us, that both the configuration of the interviewer and also the data analysis doesn't require any machine learning knowledge at all.
Okay, yeah, and I guess it's similar on your side, Tommi.
Yeah, so practically we are not many times with the customers, our customers or companies. We're not talking with any AI or IT people. It's more directly to the business. So service product owners are using the tool, and naturally the business owners as well. There's no AI knowledge whatsoever needed. That's what we also try to keep it that way.
I just want to continue with a question that I asked myself. Is there any what I really liked is the slide where you showed that even with like 10 to 50,000 customers, which isn't so much, the huge amounts of data that of unstructured data that a company might generate per month, really. And I just wanted to ask for your kind of analysis. Is there a minimum amount of data that you need for getting any meaningful results?
From our side, there's actually Andreas is asking a little bit about the same thing in the chat. So there are, in a way, that if you have a small amount of data, so the model is not so accurate. The more the data is, it has more capabilities to kind of improve itself. But in the practice with our cases, so of course when we are having the real-time understanding and it's a real-time environment, so you actually supposedly have let's say thousands of replies per month to make it really beneficial for yourself to utilize tools like us. But this is something that in the minimum side, this is something that if you let's say that you have, for example, a query or surveyed your users and you get 100 answers, so you most likely are able to handle that yourself quite nicely. So you don't really need the tool on that one. But then if you would have 1,000, so it would make sense to actually start utilizing a tool, especially if you have continuously 1,000. And this is already more than enough to have a really meaningful model, which is, let's say, the theming is relevant. The theming itself, the more data you have, it's kind of expand as well. And then of course, sometimes those smaller themes and smaller issues are kind of hidden, but they are not so relevant anymore because of the relevance. It also comes from the how many users are mentioning the same kind of an issues.
Mm-hmm. What I also liked quite a lot is, I think is very useful for product managers, is not just getting a result, but being able to really drill down into the messages, for example, that led to that sentiment conclusion that the tool does. Yeah.
It is true. Yeah.
I just have a question for Tim. So if I'm a product manager and want to use the letterbot, for example, what would I need to prepare for the letter? I mean, would I have to frame at least the first question? And yeah.
Yeah. So that might change in the future, actually, because that's a very important point for us, how the configuration process should look like to be most sort of user-friendly. Right now, it would be required, because the letterbot itself doesn't really mind on which domain it's used. So the idea would be that sort of in the letterbot is provided with a general introduction that it can provide to users, so an explanation of the domain case. So the users are well introduced and they know what to talk about. And then also there might be questions that are particularly important or particularly relevant right now. And these would also have to be changed. For example, in the smartphone context, I was particularly interested in how news coverage of data leaks or stuff like this, how this changed the perception of smartphones. This was a question I taught the tool to focus on, for example. Or another example would be that smartphones depend on sort of a mobile connection or an internet connection. This is also sort of some human knowledge that I have on the problem field, and I also included this question into the tool. But there are other questions that work for any domains. I mean, if you probe for values or something like that, that doesn't really require any formulations, but it would be important to sort of give it a few questions that it can ask to go into the areas where you as a product manager already know that you're interested in.
Okay, thank you. There is also a question from René in the chat. René, would you perhaps like to ask the question via voice, or should I read you?
Oh, that's fine. That's okay. I can also phrase it directly. So what we heard today was basically most often for the using AI for requirements management on the user. And when we are in a competition with other companies, and what I would like to know is whether there are already options you see to also analyze the competition on a functional level with using the documentation they have, knowledge base, etc. Because there are also a lot of data, and it would be at least a huge efficiency gain if I don't have to have a product manager sitting there and studying documentation from other competitors, their website, etc., and then check, okay, where they are better, where we are better, what are the difference, what do we have in common, etc. And that's another chunk of data we have today, and whether AI can help there.
I think that's a very interesting point, because I did a sort of market/competitor analysis 2 weeks ago, and I had to do all this work myself. And I mean, it's always interesting, but it takes a lot of time. And you're right. I mean, essentially, the information is out there. I think, like, at least to some degree, you know, like the problem domain, the use cases, maybe first customers. I don't know. Maybe the broad price range depends. Provides a demo, does not provide a demo, stuff like this. I mean, in general, AI could be used for this. I can see it just like you scrape the data and then maybe you try to train it to identify the relevant fields and extract it to an Excel table, pretty much. I'm not familiar with any tools on the market that do this, but I also didn't really check for it, I guess. What I know is that given that there already are tools where you can sort of write a text, for example, I need a prototype with a red button that says hi and something like this, and it builds you a website. The capabilities of like question to actual website, or like actually identifying relevant elements, is there. So I don't think there should be an issue with tackling this with AI. The question is, like, has anybody yet done it? Right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's interesting. There's also the point of in this discussion. I mean, because I mean, this is a similar things what we are also getting, and we are utilizing, let's say, open data and or lots of like a bunch of document to kind of much more faster to find out which things are trending and so on, and that way kind of get to the forensics or intelligence from the market, and this is fine, and this is a fine way to do it, and maybe have like a shortcut on getting to the large amount of data. But then there's a question that, okay, do you actually have a right to use this data? So if you're crawling the website, so you might not actually have a right to do it. And it's always, I've been also product manager like last 20 years and it's just, you just need to do this honest work, and because you are doing the corrections and the connections in a way that I would see it's hard to have an AI who would do it so that, okay, this is your website, compare that to other competitors and kind of find out the intelligence there. So, but this kind of market intelligence and getting the hidden and small signals and emergency signals from the market, that is very relevant and something that this kind of understanding qualitative analytics could help on. But it's all about data there as well. If the data need to be somewhat relevant to have the relevant answers out of it.
Okay, thank you.
Andreas Birk has a comment, I think that's building on that. Would you want to speak up?
Yeah, very much. Thank you. So yeah, thank you to René for his question that really triggered some additional thoughts on my side. That is, yeah, I understand your question would lead to very open use of AI techniques. And so that relates to me to the question, how can we develop domain models and real newly conceptual networks from first unstructured data, which would, in the relation of competitors' products, for instance, include feature categories, performance measures for comparisons, and things like that. I know a little, or some time ago, I knew a little bit about AI, and I know about ontology construction and things like that. Perhaps you have current insights and know the what's going on in the AI currently, whether there are some techniques that would also be useful for this kind of domain model and rich conceptual model construction without hopefully very little or no initial training. Do you see some chances there?
Yeah, Tommy, do you want to start?
I'm sure, Tim, you're actually deeper on the technical than I am, so.
Yeah, it's interesting that you also mentioned ontologies, because this is where sort of the professor that's supervising my research here did his PhD in years ago. So that's actually like was an interesting topic, or is still. It's coming back actually. I think based on what I like, the thing is, we have these two, or like we have more categories, but two very dominant categories are this sort of supervised machine learning and unsupervised machine learning, or deep learning, and all these categories that fell under unsupervised. What I usually do is supervised learning because I need some sort of reference for what I'm looking for. I also agree that if I would want to come up with a sort of a domain model that also learns, I mean, I don't want to refresh the domain model every 2 months because some competitor has a new idea. I would need some unsupervised approaches. And the strength of unsupervised approaches basically is to identify the most important or relevant facets or something of an offering of a competitor, for example. So how I see it, if I was a marketing department of any company, I would probably stress the factors I'm most confident about, and would also put these factors out there for everybody to see, especially customers, on my website, on my videos. So I would expect an AI model to pick this up as well, because it's the most prominent aspect of the offering. And then I would have to compare multiple offerings in an unsupervised fashion. And then the trick would be that the AI model would have to identify this one thing that's special about a competitor, not as noise or as something that is a mistake, but as the one thing that's important. And this I see sort of as a challenge. And then also sort of the identification of how do all these offerings play together. And I'm not really sure if so far this would be doable in a sort of unsupervised automated fashion. I think some supervision would be required. And also, I don't really think that that would matter that if you have to supervise it a little bit, because you as a user would want to learn from it anyways. So why not in sort of an active learning, is what's it called? Concept.
Interactive assisting.
Exactly, exactly. Maybe give some feedback to the system that you're working with. But then again, I can still see it happening. One requirement would also be that whatever model you use would be able to explain what it finds. Because in the end, I mean, this explainable AI topic is quite large right now. It's also very important. And you have to find appropriate ways for the model to explain why a specific feature was deemed as sort of relevant, or relevant in this taxonomy.
So you're not aware of ongoing activities in this area yet? So.
Actually, I mean, I'm not aware because it's not very close to my domain. I'm convinced that there is research done in this area, because especially domain models in the requirements engineering community are relevant. In particular, I mean, this is why we're talking about it. Yeah. In particular, for also if you have available requirements data and you have to not only classify it somehow, but identify ambiguities and problems, etc., etc. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from our audience here?
I think we had one other question from Andreas as well, I think, right?
I think we touched on that about the domain models that can be automatically constructed.
But I also ask about the vision, so to speak.
Okay, yeah.
Because I see very interesting products and also research, but close to real application, as I understand. I have had a few impressions from the test automation area, which is also a bit related to product management and development. And I've seen very fast progress there with the use of AI in a broad application area. So do you see it possible for product management, for requirements management, marketing to come up with a estimation what will be the future in 2 to 5 years? How will be the daily use of AI in your views?
For product managers.
For specifically for product managers. Yes.
Yeah.
I would say that, I mean, where we are also aiming, I mean, it's it will be just a tool what you would use. I mean, in our case, kind of if you think about getting or steering your product in the market kind of be the best in the market. So I think that the next level now we are kind of, at least what we think we are. So we are kind of providing you the kind of the data that you can act on, but the reality is that utilizing the wisdom what you are able to get, and also then utilizing the AIs to create the connections. And when we are talking about the business people, so of course, I mean, with the software product managers, people are quite technical, so they are good kind of they use the data and they understand the data and they are happy to also play around with the data. But then if you think about marketing, for example, so it would be one step forward. So it would be, I see that it's quite interesting to see what are the capabilities, first of all, to understand and categorize the people's information. So we are coming, for example, this kind of idea of providing this kind of a failure demand, value demand kind of a categorization of the people's information, because the ROI is quite different for different kind of usage. But then actually to provide the results together with this, for example, this T3 kind of a result, that are you able to hidden the AI altogether, and the let's say the results would be in your email in readable, human readable text format, so that okay, it seems like this week this kind of an issue is arising in this kind of area, that you should maybe take this kind of action to improve it. So that how far we could kind of hide the AI and the data and big data, and actually have a kind of actions and in that sense kind of do the work of human as far as possible when playing with the data. So these kind of a bit scary scenarios, I think, are coming up.
Okay, I think this outlook to the future is a very good point. Is a very good point in time to wrap it up here. I would like to say thanks so much to our two speakers, to Timo and to Tommi, and then also to our audience for actively contributing. I think I have 2 more slides here to just show. We are planning a second installment of this online recharge, and our next topic will be about value proposition development for deep tech innovations. So that's really, if you have some technological progress, some breakthrough, and now you are looking to build a product based on that, and that's where a lot of really successful companies and startups started. But what are the appropriate tools and processes to find a value proposition in that situation? And we'll have Felix Schönhofen from the University of Stuttgart speaking on how to discover and document and make measurable the fit between certain product functions and the customer value. And then we'll also have Franco Gatti from ABB speaking about how this customer value development can really be used as the North Star to guiding the cross-functional team through the entire product evolution. And then we'll also have a discussion at the end again. And if you're interested, we just published that on our website, and you can register already there. Here you can see the URL, and it will be on June 16, same time frame, same format. yeah, with that, we would like to say thank you to everyone. Here's our contact information. Both Tim and Tommi would be glad to hear from you. If you want to provide feedback to me, that's also very welcome, or to the ISPMA. So thanks for your time, for your contribution, and hopefully we'll see you in June again.
Thanks, Barbara. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Barbara, for the moderation. It was great to be here today. And yeah.
And one thing I should not forget, you will receive also the slides, thanks to Tim and Tommi for agreeing to share their slides with the participants. Okay.
Thanks.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.